Hi, and welcome to Tasty Tuesday, brought to you by Transition Nutrition and Fitness Coaching. I'm Angie, and I'm here every Tuesday to bring you a new and delicious whole food plant-based recipe that you can incorporate into your family's weekly menu. Today, we are going to be making some German Chocolate Brownie Bites. They are kid-approved and adult-approved as well. I've served them at a party this last weekend, and everybody loved them. So let's get started. All right, today, before we start the recipe, we need to make some powdered sugar. Now, this powdered sugar is going to be made in the dry attachment for the Vitamix. And you're going to start off with 1 cup of date sugar and 1/2 cup of coconut sugar to get the right consistency. I had to play around with this a lot because the coconut can become very overpowering when you use just coconut sugar, but it wasn't quite sweet enough for my family just using the date sugar. So I came up with a little bit of a balance. Either way, you have to turn it into a powdered sugar for this recipe. So we're going to put our cup of date sugar and our 1/2 cup of coconut sugar into the Vitamix dry attachment. Now you do have to use the dry attachment or you can burn up your Vitamix. So the dry attachment goes on, and it's going to get a little loud for just a minute. So here it goes. Now the reason you need to do this is both coconut sugar and date sugar are fairly large granules. So you need to break those granules down and make them into like a powdered sugar for the frosting and for the cake. This is enough for both the brownie recipe and the frosting recipe that we made ahead of time. And then we'll just scoop out of this for our recipe as we go. I want to show you what it looks like. You have to wait a couple of seconds to take the lid off, or this big huge cloud of powdered sugar will explode out of your dry container. But you can see on here how fine it makes the sugars, right down to a powdered sugar. All right, that's our first step. The next thing you want to do is line a 7x11 pan or have a silicone pan, but line this one with parchment paper and set it to the side. You also want to make your 2 flax eggs with your warm water and have those sitting so that they're nice and thick by the time we add them to your recipe. Then preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now we're ready to start the recipe. So our oven is preheated, our 2 flax eggs have been sitting, and I've also lined my pan. Now we're going to start the brownie bite recipe itself. Into your Vitamix, you're going to put 3/4 of a cup of cooked, peeled, mashed, and cooled orange sweet potato. So I cook mine the night before, chill them in the fridge, then get up and peel them and mash them this morning. So 3/4 of a cup of orange sweet potato. Next, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of unsweetened applesauce. This recipe does have a lot of ingredients in it, so I apologize ahead of time if I look down a little bit, but I've used almost every ingredient container I have for this recipe, so it does have a lot of ingredients. I have my 2 flax eggs that I'm going to put in, 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup, 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, just plain balsamic vinegar, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. That's not the vanilla. Let me find my vanilla. There's my vanilla. 2 tablespoons of just plain water. And we're going to puree all of this together. You may have to stop and scrape down the sides just a little bit to make sure all of that sweet potato gets incorporated. But then we're going to set this aside. Now in a large bowl, we're going to combine 1 cup of whole wheat pastry flour. We have a 1/2 cup and a 1/2 cup. So we have a 1/2 cup of that powdered sugar mixture that we made at the beginning. We have 1/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt. And now we're going to sift together 1/4 a cup of cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And that needs to be sifted in. So there's my 1/4 of a cup of 100% cacao powder, my baking powder, and my baking soda. And I'm just going to sift that together through this sifter, because you'll have little beads that you can mash through. But you want to sift that together and keep it nice and fine. Now we're going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients. So we're going to take our sweet potato mixture. And add it to our dry ingredients. These make the most delicious brownie bites, and I'm not even a big chocolate brownie fan, and I think they're delicious. So we're going to mix this together until it's well blended. It's going to be a fairly thick batter. It's a dense brownie, but it is so good. And if you have anybody in your family that loves German chocolate cake, this will really hit the spot for them. It satisfies your sweet tooth without being overly sweet, and it's still no eggs and no oil. So once we have that mixed up, we're going to add 1/4 of a cup of chopped pecans, 1/4 of a cup of shredded coconut flakes, unsweetened, and 1/4 a cup of Lily's chocolate chips. We're going to stir that together until it's all mixed in. We're going to pop this into our parchment lined pan and put it in the oven to bake for between 20 and 25 minutes. And you take a toothpick and test it, and when the toothpick comes out clean, you know that your brownie bites are done. You make the frosting while our brownies are cooking. We're going to start with 1 more cup of that baked, mashed, cooled sweet potato. We're going to add that to the Vitamix. And we have 1 cup of the powdered sugar mixture that we made at the beginning. We have 1/2 cup of almond butter. Now, if you wanted to give your brownies a peanut buttery flavor, you could also use peanut butter or cashew butter, but the almond butter is the least flavorful, so it adds the moisture and the fat and the thickness without overpowering with flavor. And 1/2 cup of pure cocoa powder again. To this, we're going to gradually add enough milk to make it a frosting consistency. You want it to be really thick. You're going to have to scrape the sides down several times to make sure that it gets nice and mixed. So here we go. We're going to start with just a little bit of the milk and start blending. When you notice your blender stopping, you can flip it off, flip it back on, and restart it. And like I said, this does take a little bit of time because it's a very thick frosting. Now I'm going to scrape the sides down just a little bit. And add just a little bit more of the cashew milk. And keep blending. I'm going to scrape the sides down again. You want this to be a nice, thick frosting. So we only want to add enough of the cashew milk to get it to blend. And that should do it. Now we're going to stir in the rest of our ingredients into our Vitamix, but not chop them up. And that is 1/4 of a cup of chopped pecans and 1/4 of a cup of shredded coconut, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a teaspoon of caramel extract. Now you can pulse this if you want a few times. It just depends on how chunky you would like your finished frosting. I pulse it just a couple of times so that I don't break down the nuts completely. And then for the remaining time, I just kind of stir it in with my spatula, because I still want some of that coconut and pecan texture to come through in my frosting. You can sit this inside your refrigerator to chill, but you can see it is a nice, thick frosting consistency for the top of the brownies. And now we'll wait for our brownies to finish cooking and cool before we frost them. So here the brownies are right out of the oven. Tested them with a toothpick. Toothpick comes out clean. We're gonna let them cool for about 5 minutes. And then we're gonna use the sides of the parchment paper to remove them from the pan and place them on a wire rack to cool completely. And we'll come back when they're cool to frost them. Now that the brownies have cooled, we're going to take our frosting, which is chilled in the fridge, and you can frost them as thick or as thin as you like. And you can see that this frosting is very much similar to a regular chocolate frosting that you would make for a regular chocolate cake. And you can frost all over the top. If you have extra frosting, which I usually do, it's really good to use with sliced apples or any other fruit that you might like to pair with chocolate. But what I like to do is frost the top nice and thick, and then decorate it with pecan halves so that each brownie gets a pecan half. And we'll come back with them decorated and plated. So you can either cut these into 12 full-size brownies or cut them in half again and make 24 bite-sized brownie bites, which is what I usually do. Then they just pop right in when you have a party. Each person can have a little taste. I hope you enjoyed this recipe as much as we do. For those German chocolate lovers, you're going to love this recipe. Thank you for tuning in today. And remember, plants are the best medicine. But also, please remember to check out that survey. Thank you to those of you who have done it, and you have mentioned that you wanted more breakfast and more sides, and that's what I'm working on. So stay tuned in the future for that. Also, if you like these videos, please remember to give us a thumbs up, because that really helps. And hit that subscribe button so that you won't miss any of these delicious recipes. In addition, if you want a hard copy of this recipe, just email me at Angie@transitionnutritionfitness.com, and I'd be happy to send you a hard copy of the recipe. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday.